Welcome to episode 12 of Breaking Barriers, and today I'm joined by Rhianna. Rhianna, how's it going?
Really well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'm excited because today we have a guest with another guest. We always have guests. We've got somebody whose name we've been trying to discuss before the podcast and have to say.
Preeti.
Preeti. See, that's what I thought it was, but I was scared. I was like, what if we say it wrong?
Preeti Shetty.
So we're just going to kind of get right into it, and I think we've got a few questions for you, and I'm going to let Rhianna sort of take it off.
So I was doing my own bit of research about your background, and I came across that you accidentally fell into the sports industry, and I was just wondering, how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it was an accident or fate or any of the terms you'd like to call it. I moved to London to go to university to do my undergrad when I was 18 or 19 from Dubai, which is where I was born and where I grew up. And I did a media and comms degree because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I thought I wanted to work in TV production because it seemed like a fun thing to do at the time. And my first ever sort of work experience, I guess, happened to be at BBC Sport. And I took the internship because it was the BBC, not because it was sport, because again, going back to my TV production dreams, I guess. But it happened to be at BBC Sport, and I've always liked sport. I've never really, I didn't at the time think that that's what I wanted to do career-wise. But it happened to be at this really incredible sport outreach project. It was supposed to be a 4-week internship, and I did 4 weeks, and then I stayed on. So it was definitely an accident. But after that experience, and I stayed for a year and a half, I think it was, really had this moment of clarity, this moment of, I love this, and sport really is a tool that can change people's lives, and I never want to do anything else again. And I'm very privileged to be able to say that I never did anything else ever again.
And so you've just started out, you've gone into this internship not expecting things to go, and all of a sudden you're on the path. And where do you go from there? From that internship, where is it that you go that gets you to where you are now?
Lots of other internships. No, I was very lucky. The project I worked at BBC Sport was called Your Game. It was a really great project with lots of different stakeholders, and I think really gave me an insight into, how collaborative sport can be, but also that there's many different players. So at my year and a half at the Beeb, I really got to meet lots of incredible charities, lots of incredible sport organizations that were already working in this space and that were effectively doing what we now call sport development. And really started to look at this and say, well, there are lots of roles here, there's lots of avenues to pursue, and it really opened my eyes to a whole new career path. Because I knew, from that point that that's what I wanted to do, I then looked up other organizations that did similar work. So, Sport for Development NGOs, the likes of Kick It Out. And interestingly, one of the funders of this project was the Football Foundation, who many years later I then went on to work for. So, it's a lot of my career path has been full of coincidences, but also just really reminiscent that the sector is quite small and everybody does know everybody. So those relationships that I built in my first ever year in sport are relationships I took forward, and I kept in touch with these people, and went off and did a whole bunch of internships after that. At the time, free internships were a thing. And I'm very glad that they're not so much anymore. But I did a bunch of free internships because I was able to, and then ended up building up, a body of work and network and contacts, and got to the point where I was able to do this by myself. So I worked for myself for a bit. I went freelance and worked for lots of incredible sport for development organizations, and really started to carve out a niche within the sector that said, okay, well, here's the stuff I'm good at. So, here's how I can prove that I can do this. And then finally ended up, as I said, working for the Football Foundation, which until recently I did for many years.
So you're now the CEO of Upshot. How did that come about?
Yeah, again, full of happenstance and random coincidences. So, somewhere through my my point of working for myself, I was working with tons of different small charities, small sport for development organizations, but also I was doing lots of work with the bigger sport brands, and I kept coming to this point of we ask for grants, we fill out annual reports, and funders keep asking the question, what difference are you making? What's the impact that you're having? And at the time, as with any small charity, everybody does everything. And I kept saying, and I'm sure lots of other people in the sector have said this before, oh, I wish they could come and see, we are making a difference, but I don't know how to put it down on paper. And this was around 2012. So the Olympics was happening, and there was a lot of talk of legacy. What is the legacy of a mega event? What's the legacy of sport, in a country, on communities? I then did my master's that year while I was working, and I sort of ended up specializing in this impact question. So what is the difference we're making? How can we prove what our impact is? And because I had these relationships with the Football Foundation, they were building Upshot around the same time. So I ended up writing my dissertation on Upshot, and they were kind enough to let me in and show me what they were building. So I had a very early insight into what something like Upshot is and how it helps organizations measure their impact. I then finished my master's. There were no jobs in the sector because the Olympics had just finished. And there was a job going at the Football Foundation. One of the first jobs at Upshot. I was a terrible fit for it. I went for it anyway because I knew so much about it. And I got that job and, sort of worked my way up, if you like. And for the last 4 years, so worked my way up through the foundation. For the last 4 years, I've been running Upshot within the foundation. And then a couple of months ago, and obviously COVID and everything that's happened with that, Upshot's really grown from strength to strength. And last year, I started to explore with the foundation whether it was time to move on, whether it made sense for Upshot to not just sit within the Football Foundation, but be its own entity. Because over the last few years, we started working with so much more than football. We work with other sport, we work with non-sport, we work internationally. And we started to get to a point where, has this thing outgrown its parent, if you like? And is it time for us to stand on our own 2 feet? Which is what we did. So as of a couple of weeks ago, I moved Upshot away from the Football Foundation. We've set up as a community interest company, so a social enterprise. And all my team has come with me and all our clients have come with us, which is amazing. But that's now led me to being the CEO of a small sport tech startup, if you like, but with the kind of privilege that comes with years of experience and support from the Football Foundation and their funding partners.
That is amazing to hear that you've gone from that sort of outside place to somewhere where your skills are valued. And one thing I wanted to ask you, because before we spoke, we asked how your day was, and you said it's been hectic and manic. So what does your day-to-day responsibilities look like? What is the life of Preeti? How does it go?
Well, it's a weird time, and I've been having a lot of these conversations lately. I think we think, or at least I did, and maybe it was my naivety, it's cool to be a CEO and to have that title, but actually it comes with quite a lot of operational stuff. And all I have been doing is tons of operational stuff. So pensions and tax and contracts, things that I sort of took for granted before, because, when you work at a larger organization, or to be honest, when it's not your own company, someone does that for you. Payroll is something that happens. And I am learning that payroll is not something that happens unless I do it. So it's been an extremely steep learning curve. Like I've been running Upshot and working with Upshot for the last 8 years. So I know my business really well. I know the sector really well. But the stuff that I'm learning and, with this new role is the buck really does stop with you. If somebody doesn't know the answer, I'm supposed to. And a lot of the time, I don't know the answer, so I then Google it, because I'm not the only person to have asked this question, thankfully. But it's been, day to day lately, because we've just transitioned, is very operational. Day-to-day at Upshot is very varied. And I think if you ask any of my team, our answer to what's your favorite bit about working with Upshot is the variety. Like, our clients are so different. We work with big sport federations. We work with tiny charities. We work with universities and local authorities, the criminal justice sector and education. So every day is different. And every day we put ourselves in the shoes of, smaller or bigger organizations to try and help them understand what difference they're making. And it's a really wonderful way for us. And I think it's where we all get our job satisfaction, playing your small part in helping somebody else have impact, which is a really wonderful thing. So yeah, I mean, day to day is very different every day. Right now, for me, it's just getting my head around all the new things that come with being a new CEO.
You mentioned a little bit about COVID earlier on, and we know that it has had a massive impact on sport. Would you say that's impacted the work that you're doing, whether that's positively or negatively?
Yes, massively. Our partners, our clients, everybody we work with, they're predominantly charities. And obviously they have struggled not being able to deliver in person, obviously has been a huge issue, but also funding cuts, right? So, for us, we, especially immediately when COVID happened, I think everybody used this, but we talk about pivoting a lot. Everybody pivoted. For us, we were in quite a lucky place. We're already digital. We work with data. It's all about tech. So we were really well positioned. We didn't have to change much, but what we did have to change was how we supported our organizations. Interestingly, it was one of our best years ever, because I think most charities, most sport organizations looked at this and thought, right, we need real-time information. We need to understand, who our audiences are, who our beneficiaries are, how do we better support them, what's changed, what's the data telling us, and we were perfectly placed to help them do that. So for us, it's been a really good year, but there's also a recognition that it's been a good year for us because it's been hard for all of our clients. So, we've put a lot of time into what do we pivot, where do we pivot, what do we adapt, how do we support, especially smaller charities, to go digital, because it's not easy, right? And, when you're stuck in this mindset of, but this is how we've always done it, that can be quite a challenge for organizations. So a lot of the work that we did over the last year while trying to transition the business out was, how do we improve capacity within organizations? How do we improve people's digital skills to help sport organizations still meet, their user requirements, if you like?
It's really interesting, and I just wanted to kind of bring you back to a point you mentioned when you were sort of coming into the business. You mentioned there weren't many opportunities because the Olympics had just finished, and do you see that there are more opportunities for other women trying to get into the industry now?
Definitely. I think the biggest realization, now, and I play my part in this within the sector, is when we think of sport traditionally and you think of, what are the jobs one would get in sport, it's not just on the pitch. It's not just as a player. We're all businesses. There are hundreds of jobs that you wouldn't naturally think of. And I think we're such a good example of this. We are sport, we are tech, we are third sector, we're a social enterprise. We just us alone, we sit on sort of the cusp of, 3 different industries. And I think once you start to look at it that way and realize that, you could be a finance person or a marketing person, or you have event management skills, or you're just a really good admin person, there is a role for you in the sport industry. And that, I think, has really changed things, because there are more roles now, and there aren't roles. And I think for me, this was particularly important. They're not roles that require you to be good at sport. And that, I think, was, when I was starting out, I was never good at sport. I liked it, but I was never good at it. And for me, that realization that, and I think when you look around sport organizations now, not everybody that works in a sport organization is good at sport. And I always find it funny when people interview for us, or when they send in applications for vacancies, a lot of people start their cover letter with, I really love football, and so I want to work here. And I'm always like, it's not a requirement of the job. I don't need you to love sport to work here. I need you to care about what we do. I need you to add value. I need you to be committed and enthusiastic. Those are the skills I'm looking for. If you like sport, that's great, but that's not the criteria anymore. And I think that's been a real game changer for women in the sector, because it not only allows for women that like sport and are good at sport, it also allows for any woman to enter the industry if they want to.
So this question is more directed to you personally. So as a BAME woman in the sports industry, have you had to overcome any challenges because of that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think as a woman and as a person of color, and then the intersectionality between the two, right? So, it's a double minority, if you like. And, the last year has been really interesting with Black Lives Matter, and the industry has been a lot more open with having race conversations. I have never been more popular. And that says something. The reason I'm so popular at the moment is because there aren't a lot of BAME women in senior positions in the sports sector. And that's why lots of people are coming to me to speak on things and give my opinion, right? Of course, I've had struggles, as has everybody else. I've had struggles because I'm a woman. I've had struggles because I'm a BAME woman. But there's also sort of an element of tokenism, right? Like I have definitely questioned in the last year, which I maybe didn't do in the past, whether I'm only invited to things now because I'm a woman of color and because there aren't that many. And I'm potentially not even the most qualified person to speak on the subject. But, the panel needs to be diverse, right? And on one hand, I'm glad people are taking into account that the panel needs to be diverse. Like that's already a change and that's a wonderful thing. But on the other side, there are plenty of other incredible women of color that are doing great things too. So, that's been interesting for me personally, is to try and decide when it's best for it to be me and when it's best for it to be somebody else who's much more qualified to speak on a particular subject. There's been, and I think it's not new to anybody, right? But we talk about imposter syndrome and all of these things, which you can have if you're white, if you're a male, everybody has them at every single level. But I think that double minority, that intersectionality really comes into play when you're already feeling a little bit insecure, or you're already, with me with the new role, I think it's definitely that. Like changing my signature to CEO was a really weird thing because all the CEOs I've ever known have been older white men. So like that was a weird thing for me. And then, when I'm questioning whether I'm getting it right, there's multiple lenses on there. Am I getting it right am I doing enough for women in the sector? Am I doing enough for BAME people in the sector? There's these additional layers that you add on, and it's like a vicious circle. Then you question whether you're doing it right in the first place, right? So, so yes, to answer your question, yes, there are challenges. And I think the more senior you get, the more opportunity you have to influence them, which is fantastic. But the more you also question whether you're doing it right.
There was a bit of a final question to tie things off. So you mentioned there, things need to be more inclusive and not just sort of in a tick box way, but in a more conversational way and creating that space for women. What else do you think that the industry can do to make sure that there are more women being recognised and seen on every level, and not just at the highest level, and not just because they are present and there to be seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a long way to go. I think we've also come a long way. And for me, it's about being representative, right? It's about being representative of the communities that you live and work in at every level of the game, at every level of our industry. It's saying, where are we working? Who are we working with? And will our clients, audiences, partners, players, when they look at us, do we relate? Are we representative of them? And I think if the answer to that is no, then we're not doing enough, right? So, like everybody has an EDI strategy right now. Like it's the newest buzzword, but that's not enough. And I think it's really about each organization examining themselves, not just at board level, but at your executive level, at your entry level. It's making sure that you are taking away any barriers, that you're providing opportunities, and that, you know, you're checking your own racism, your own sexism at the door, because, you know, even for those of us, and I think it's not expecting everyone to have the answer, right? Like, I think a lot of people talk to women or to people of color or to LGBTQI people, or, you know, and expect them to have the solutions. And that's not how this works. So it's saying, you know, we do need to have those open conversations. You need to be comfortable being uncomfortable when you have them. But really, the only way to move forward is to look within your own house and say, do we think we are being inclusive? Do we think we're being representative? What are the barriers? And let's make sure that we're addressing them, not just now because we have a strategy and because everyone's eyes are on us. How do we continue to do that so we get to a point of equity? Because we talk about equality, we're so far away from equality. Let's get to a point where it's equitable, and then I think, you know, maybe we've got somewhere.
Yeah, that's an extremely powerful point you made there. And we're really glad to kind of have you on here and hear you say those things, because I don't think people hear that a lot, especially from where you've gone and where you are now. Rhianna, have you got any last questions or anything that you want to ask?
It's really inspiring, your story,
Yeah.
seeing from where you've come from and where you are now. And I think a lot of young women, young girls watching will be inspired by you and what you've said.
Absolutely.
Great. I mean, I'm really pleased to hear that. And you two are doing such a great job. Like, I was watching all the previous videos, and, you know, this is exactly what we need, right? It's, you know, showing other people, other women, you know, other people of color, that there are really interesting opportunities. There's interesting places to go. Sometimes we make our own path, and sometimes we need support. But I think, yeah, you guys are great examples of this.
Oh, thank you so much. We're so happy to have you on here. Just a final thing, where can we find you online for anyone who's really interested in your organization and the work you do?
So we're at www.upshot.org.uk. So feel free to check us out. And I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, and you can search for me by name, or Twitter. I'm at Preeti Shetty. So yeah, come and say hello. Come and find out more about what we do.
Great, thank you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.